The city was engulfed in the cold darkness of night, so silent that the wind howling through the old streets sounded like the whispers of a lost soul. The dim streetlights flickered on the damp pavement, casting long, distorted streaks of light that looked like invisible hands reaching out from the shadows. It was just another winter night in the suburbs of Maine, where the biting cold made people long to stay curled up indoors. But not everyone had a home to return to. Amidst the stillness, a shadow shot past, swift as an arrow, powerful as a small storm. It was Rex, a German shepherd with sleek black fur streaked with brown, his eyes burning like twin embers in the night. His breath came out in wisps of white smoke, his paws hitting the pavement with force, showing no hesitation or fatigue. Rex wasn't running to escape. He was searching, locked in a desperate race against time and death. He weaved through dark alleys, dodging the occasional car that flashed blinding headlights as it passed, his ears perked up in alertness. There was something in his gaze, not just urgency, but an unspoken promise, a mission he carried like a sacred burden. Rex came to a halt in front of the police station, a small building with faint yellow light seeping through its windows. He stood there, chest heaving, then threw back his head and barked, once, twice, then a rapid succession of barks that echoed into the silent night. It wasn't just noise, it was a call for help, a demand that could not be ignored. Inside, Jake Reynolds, a 32-year-old police officer with a weathered face and tired eyes after a long shift, had just closed his last case file. Stretching, he pulled his thick jacket over his shoulders, ready to head home, a small apartment a few blocks away, where only solitude awaited him. The barking made him pause, his hand still gripping the doorknob. "Just a stray dog," he muttered, trying to brush off the sound as part of the city noise he had grown used to over 8 years on the job. But the barking didn't stop, it grew sharper, insistent, like a hammer pounding against his ears, demanding his attention. Jake sighed, pushed open the door, and was immediately wrapped in the bitter cold. Under the dim light, he saw Rex, a large, muscular German shepherd, but what truly startled him were the dog's eyes. They weren't the eyes of a stray or a hungry animal. They held a story, a burning plea that couldn't be ignored. Rex didn't wait. He lunged forward, grabbed Jake's pant leg gently but firmly, gave it a tug, then turned and ran, glancing back as if beckoning him to follow. "Hey, slow down!" Jake called, but the instinct he had honed over years of facing danger told him this wasn't just some random occurrence. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out his flashlight, flicked it on, and a sharp beam of white light sliced through the darkness. Without hesitation, he took off after the disappearing shadow. Rex led Jake through darkened streets, where the street lights barely illuminated the crumbling walls and puddles on the ground. The sound of Jake's footsteps echoed against the pavement, mingling with his own heavy breathing. The dog ran with unnerving precision, never slowing, never looking back, as if every step had already been mapped out in his mind. They turned into a narrow alley, where the air was thick with the scent of damp concrete and abandoned garbage. A single streetlight in the distance cast a weak glow, but it was enough for Jake to see, a figure slumped against a cold brick wall, motionless, like a forgotten statue. He stepped forward, his flashlight sweeping over the scene, making his heart pound. A young woman, no older than 25, so thin she looked like skin and bones, was huddled against the wall. Her frail arms clutched 2 newborns, wrapped in thin, tattered blankets that offered little protection against Maine's bone-chilling winter. The infants' faces were pale, their lips tinged blue, their breaths so faint they nearly disappeared into the freezing air. Jake knelt down, the light illuminating the woman's face. Her lips were cracked, her eyes half closed, her skin ashen like someone on the brink of death. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" he called, his voice both gentle and urgent. No response. He reached out, lightly shaking her shoulder. Her body was ice-cold, limp, but then, her eyelashes fluttered, and her dull, unfocused eyes slowly opened, meeting his with silent despair. Beside them, Rex let out a soft whimper, his nose touching her hand, his body pressing against hers like a living barrier against the deadly cold. And then Jake realized, Rex hadn't just led him here. The dog had been here all along, using its own body to shield the three of them from the freezing night. Jake reached out, touching one of the infants. Their skin was like ice, so cold that he shuddered. "Damn it," he muttered, his pulse hammering. If he didn't act fast, they wouldn't make it through the night. Without hesitation, Jake yanked off his thick patrol jacket, the one he'd worn all shift to fight the cold, and wrapped it tightly around all three of them. "This is Reynolds." He spoke urgently into his radio, his voice shaking with adrenaline. "Send an ambulance to the East Alley off Main Street. 1 woman and 2 infants, critical condition. Hurry!" The radio crackled. "Copy that, ambulance en route." He turned back to the woman. "Help is coming, just hang on," he said, though he wasn't sure if she could hear him. Her eyelids fluttered slowly, her lips barely moving as if trying to speak, but only a weak breath escaped. Rex remained by their side, his nose gently nudging one of the babies, his eyes never leaving them, like a steadfast guardian refusing to abandon his post. Jake looked at Rex, feeling a deep sense of admiration. This dog hadn't just found him. It had been their hero long before he arrived, battling the cold to keep them alive. In the distance, the wail of an ambulance cut through the silent night. Red and blue lights flickered, reflecting on the wet pavement. The vehicle skidded to a stop, and paramedics rushed out with medical bags in hand. "What's the situation?" one of them asked, kneeling beside Jake. "She's barely responsive. The infants are freezing, breathing is weak, they've likely been exposed for hours," Jake answered quickly, tension thick in his voice. One paramedic checked the woman's pulse. A tattered ID card slipping from her pocket revealed her name, Emily. "Weak pulse, but she's alive," he confirmed. Another paramedic unwrapped the blankets around the infants. "Critical condition. We need to warm them immediately." The team moved with practiced speed, wrapping the babies in emergency thermal blankets, placing tiny oxygen tubes over their noses, and carefully lifting Emily onto a stretcher. Rex shot to his feet, his eyes darting between them in visible distress. As they wheeled the stretcher toward the ambulance, he lunged forward, claws scraping the ground, barking loudly. "No dogs in the ambulance," one of the paramedics said firmly, blocking his path. But Rex's barking wasn't aggressive, it was desperate. His body trembled, his gaze flickering between the ambulance doors and Jake. To him, this wasn't a rescue. It was a force taking away the ones he had sworn to protect. "Wait!" Jake stepped forward, his voice resolute. "He found them. He stayed with them through the night. He's the reason they're still alive." The paramedic hesitated, glancing between Jake and Rex. Jake knelt beside the dog, placing a steady hand on his head, looking into his deep brown eyes. "Listen, Rex, they're safe now. I promise you, I won't let them be taken from you." Rex stared at him, his breathing slowing, as if hesitating to trust him. "I'll follow the ambulance," Jake told the paramedics, patting Rex's side. "Come on, buddy. We're going with them." They arrived at the hospital just moments after the ambulance. The emergency room was a whirlwind of motion, doctors calling out orders, machines beeping, the sharp scent of antiseptics filling the air. Emily and the babies were rushed into critical care, disappearing behind closed doors. Rex paced outside the glass windows, ears perked, eyes locked on the place where they had vanished. Jake led him to the waiting area, patting his head. "We just have to wait now, buddy. They're in good hands." But Rex wouldn't sit still. He paced back and forth, ears twitching at every approaching footstep, like a soldier standing guard. A young nurse walked by, pausing to glance at the dog. "Is he yours?" she asked, smiling. Jake shook his head. "No. He's theirs. He saved them before I even got there." She knelt, stroking Rex's fur. "He hasn't taken his eyes off that door. He must love them a lot." Jake nodded, his gaze distant. "Yeah. I've never seen anything like it." He had seen many things in his 8 years as a cop, robberies, fights, accidents, but never had he seen a dog with such loyalty and determination. Hours passed, the hospital growing quieter as night bled into early morning. Jake sat in a waiting room chair, his eyes burning from exhaustion, but Rex hadn't moved from his spot near the emergency room doors. His ears flicked at every sound, his eyes never leaving the hallway. Jake watched him, wondering what had driven this dog to be so unwavering. Had he once had a home? Had he been abandoned? Or was this the first time he had found a family to protect? He didn't know. But one thing was certain, Rex wouldn't leave until he knew they were safe. Finally, as the first rays of dawn crept through the hospital windows, a doctor emerged, pulling down his mask. Jake shot to his feet, Rex rushing forward, stopping just in front of the doctor's legs. "How are they?" Jake asked, his voice stretched tight. The doctor offered a tired but reassuring smile. "The infants are out of danger. They suffered from severe cold exposure and dehydration, but they're stable now. The mother, Emily, is still weak but recovering. She should wake up soon." Rex let out a soft whimper, his tail giving a faint wag, the first sign of relief he had shown. Jake exhaled deeply, patting Rex's head. "Hear that, buddy? They're going to be okay." But Rex did not leave. It sat down in front of the emergency room door, eyes fixed on it as if determined to witness them walk out with its own eyes. Jake remained in his seat, leaning his head against the wall, lost in thought. He recalled his early days as a police officer when he still believed he could change the world. Now, after years of facing the dark corners of society, he only wanted to do his duty and go home. But tonight, Rex had changed that. The dog had not only saved 3 lives but also rekindled in him a feeling he had long lost: hope. As the morning light streamed into a hallway, a hoarse voice called out from inside the emergency room. "Rex!" The dog's head shot up, and it rushed into the room before Jake could react. He followed closely behind, stepping in to find Emily awake. She sat on the hospital bed, exhausted but alert, her disheveled hair clinging to her pale face. She looked at Rex, her trembling hand reaching out. "You found someone to save me," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Rex stepped forward, pressing its cold nose into her hand before gently resting its head on her lap, as if finally releasing the burden it had carried for hours. Emily stroked its fur, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You never left me." A nurse entered, carrying 2 small infants, now rosy and breathing steadily in their tiny cribs. "They're healthy," the nurse said, placing them beside Emily. She burst into tears, clutching one of the babies while looking at Rex. "You kept us alive." Rex lifted its head slightly, nudging the crib of the other child, as if checking to make sure they were truly safe. Jake stood in the doorway, watching quietly. He asked gently, "Emily, do you have anywhere to go after this? Family, friends?" She shook her head, her voice trembling. "No. I lost everything when I lost my home, my job, my money, everything. It's just me and my babies now. And Rex, he never left us, even when I had nothing to give him." Jake's chest tightened. He had seen many difficult situations, but Emily's story and Rex's unwavering loyalty struck something deep within him. "Get some rest," he said before stepping outside. He pulled out his phone and called his station chief. "I have a situation," he said firmly. "A young mother, 2 newborns, and a dog that saved their lives. They have nowhere to go. We have to do something." The chief was silent for a moment before sighing. "What do you want, Reynolds?" "I want to help them," Jake replied. "Not just for tonight, but for a new beginning." Within 2 hours, everything was arranged. A local charity agreed to provide temporary housing, and a support program for single mothers promised to help Emily find a job and stabilize her life. Jake returned to the hospital room, looking at Emily. "You don't have to go back to the streets," he said. "We found a place for you and the babies. A safe place." Emily looked up, eyes brimming with tears. I don't know how to thank you." "Don't say anything," Jake replied with a small smile. He looked at Rex, still lying next to the cribs. "Looks like you still have a job to do, buddy." Rex huffed softly, as if agreeing. 3 days later, Emily and her babies were discharged from the hospital. Jake arrived to pick them up, walking through the hospital corridor with a strange feeling, relief, but also a renewed sense of purpose. When he entered the room, Rex was still curled up next to the cribs, ears twitching even in sleep, ever the protector. Emily sat on the bed, holding one baby while the other slept soundly in the crib. She looked up and smiled weakly. "I keep thinking this is a dream. That I'll wake up back in that alley, cold and hungry." Jake shook his head. "Not anymore. Things have changed." A nurse entered with discharge papers. "The car is here," she said. "Everything is ready." Emily nodded, looking down at Rex. "Come on, buddy. Let's go home." At the word, "home," Rex jumped up, stretched, and walked over to her, tail wagging slightly. For the first time, Jake saw it truly relax. He led them outside, where a car was waiting to take them to their new shelter. Rex hopped in first, settling beside the two babies, its amber eyes shining. Emily turned to Jake, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for everything." Jake nodded. "It's a new chance. Take it." As the car pulled away, Rex sat upright, its golden eyes watching the world outside. For the first time in a long while, it was not searching for help or fighting off danger. It had found a family, and now, they were stepping into a new future together. Jake stood there, watching the car disappear into the morning light. He smiled. For the first time in years, he felt that he had not just done his job, but had truly made a difference. But the story wasn't over. A week later, Jake received an update from the charity. Emily had started a part-time job at a small shop, and her babies were enrolled in a free daycare program. And Rex? He was still there, lying at their doorstep every day, guarding them like a silent hero. Jake decided to visit them that weekend. When he arrived, Rex ran out to greet him, tail wagging excitedly, as if welcoming an old friend. Emily stood at the door, smiling brighter than ever. "You're just in time," she said. "I just made some cookies. Come in." Jake stepped inside, sitting at the small kitchen table in the modest yet cozy apartment. Rex curled up by his feet, head resting on the floor, eyes closed in rare peace. "He still protects us," Emily said, placing a plate of cookies on the table. "But now, I think he knows we're safe." Jake nodded, looking at Rex. "He didn't just save you and the babies. He saved me too, reminding me why I do this job." Emily smiled, and in that moment, amidst the laughter of the two babies playing in the next room, they were no longer strangers brought together by fate. They were connected by loyalty, kindness, and a small miracle on a cold winter night. The first rays of spring sunshine stretched across the streets of Maine, gently melting away the lingering cold of a harsh winter. In the small but warm apartment, Emily sat by the window, cradling a giggling baby while the other played with an old toy on the floor. Beside her, Rex lay stretched out, his amber eyes half closed in rare tranquility, though his ears twitched slightly, ever vigilant. This house wasn't luxurious, wasn't fully furnished, but to Emily it was a whole world, a place she never thought she would have again. And it all began on that freezing night when Rex refused to give up on her. A little further away, Jake returned to his daily duties at the police station, but he was no longer the man who simply completed his tasks and went home to loneliness. Every time he picked up the radio or walked through dark streets, he thought of Rex, the dog who taught him that kindness and perseverance could change destinies, not just for one person, but for hearts that had long turned cold. And so, when you hear the wind howl through a winter's night, remember Rex, a small soul that proved love, no matter how simple, is strong enough to change the world. And perhaps, somewhere out there, miracles are still waiting for us to reach out and embrace them.